Hi, I'm MiJa Wi. I'm currently teaching at Wesleyan Theological College in Manchester. In this video, I'm going to talk about Asian hermeneutics. Asian hermeneutics is a relatively recent development in biblical interpretation. Traditionally, biblical interpreters seek to find meanings from the historical context of the text, using the tools of historical criticism, and from the text itself, with literary and narrative criticism. More recently, however, greater attention has been given to how readers hear the text within their own context. The underlying question is a simple one, even if the answers are complex. When anyone listens to scripture, what are they hearing? This attention to reader response has coincided with the rise of global Christianity, so that the voices around the world or at the margins, such as Asia, Africa, Latin America, which have long been unheard or not taken seriously in the arena of biblical interpretation, are now being heard. Hence, particular experiences of the readers in their historical, political, and socioeconomic context take significant roles in finding meanings within the text. For example, how might an Egyptian Christian read the Exodus account? What might those who experience hunger on a daily basis hear the Lord's Prayer? How might those under political oppression hear the coming of God's kingdom and God's deliverance of the oppressed and judgment on the oppressors? Fundamentally, it begs some critical questions. To what extent does one's location in terms of nationality, ethnicity, gender, power, and education shape the ways in which one interprets scriptures? What does it mean to read the Bible from the reader's context? Can this be justified? Or are we in danger of imposing our own experiences or ideology on the text? Keeping these questions in mind, first, let us look at what is Asian hermeneutics. What makes biblical interpretation distinctively Asian? Asian hermeneutics is a part of a contextual reading that draws attention to particular experiences of the readers at the margins. Hence, the readers and their experiences in specific context take an active role in finding meanings of the text. Thus, we may ask, what are some particular experiences of Asia or Asian people? This is by no means without its own challenges. In any quest of Asian biblical interpretation, one should acknowledge the vastness of its geopolitical region, ranging from West Asia, Middle East, to India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, to East Asia, China, Japan, Korea, to Southeast Asia, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Myanmar, the cultural and religious diversity and socioeconomic and historical political complexity of Asia and its people. However, despite this complexity, there are several common contextual issues relevant to Asian hermeneutics. First, Asia has long been a place with the scriptures of other major religions of the world: Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, including highly developed philosophical teachings, Confucianism and Taoism, and a deep cultural heritage. Second, socioeconomic poverty and disparity is a day-to-day reality in many parts of Asia. And third, colonization by imperial powers is a shared experience of many Asian countries. Given these needs and the issues arising from them, Asian hermeneutics seeks to read the Bible in ways that are relevant to Asian settings. And at the same time, it uses Asian context to illuminate meanings of the Bible. Thus, Asian biblical interpretation stresses dialogic ways of interacting between the text and the Asian context. And in reaction to Western historical critical method and in search of indigenous Asian hermeneutics, that is biblical interpretation, which is distinctively Asian, Asian biblical interpreters have developed various approaches either by reflecting Asia's past religious cultural traditions or by applying Asia's present context to interpret the Bible. So I'm going to identify 4 Asian hermeneutical approaches, namely, first, cross-textual and cross-cultural. Second, contextual. Third, post-colonial. And lastly, Asian feminist approaches. So first, the cross-textual and cross-cultural approaches. This approach seeks to put the Bible and traditional Asian religious text or cultural teachings in dialogue. For instance, the proximity of wisdom literature in the Old Testament to Buddhist teachings is used to find common ground for interfaith dialogue. Similar text or religious concepts of the Bible and other Asian texts are contrasted to illuminate the distinctiveness of the Bible. Others seek to read the Bible through Asian cultural elements, such as folk tales, tribal values, or Confucian ethos, many of which are in fact the underlying basis of Asian mentality. Or still others seek to read the Bible by using Asian traditions and popular teachings to bridge the gap between the foreignness of Christianity and Asian identity. The significance of benevolence in Confucianism is paralleled with agape in Christianity. Ancestor worship in Korean and Chinese context, which was once indiscriminately condemned as pagan and idolatrous, is reappraised through critical engagement with the text and cultural settings of filial piety. Community-oriented tribal values are also revisited in Asians' reading of the Bible. And second, the contextual or liberation approach emerged in response to socio-economic and political situations of Asia in line with liberation theology in Latin America and Black theology in Africa. The biblical image of God as the protector and liberator of the oppressed, and the suffering of Jesus and his identification with the poor become hermeneutical, so that the scripture particularly seeks to experience the poverty and the socioeconomic disparity of Asian people. Asian liberation hermeneutics rereads the Bible from the suffering of the oppressed, such as Minjung, which means the powerless and dispossessed mass in Korea, or Burakumin, which refers to outcast and discriminated communities in Japan, or Dalit, often called the untouchables in India. So for instance, Dalit hermeneutics in India reads the text from the counter-status quo perspective. And in doing so, it not only seeks to liberate Dalit people, but also challenges the deeply rooted caste structure in India. Liberation hermeneutics seeks to bring the marginalized into the subject of God's history and challenge the many oppressive realities in Asia. Third, the post-colonial approach emerges from Asian countries once colonized either by European powers or by Imperial Japan. It employs an hermeneutics of suspicion, which sees the Bible as a text loaded with colonial intentions. Hence, a crucial hermeneutical key is to identify the embedded colonial codes and ideologies which lie behind the biblical text in order to reconstruct the meaning of the text. In doing this, it subverts the traditional meanings of the biblical text. For example, post-colonial hermeneutics brings the perspectives and the voices of the protesting tenants, which have often been silenced, to the front in its subversive readings of the parable of the tenants in the Synoptic Gospels. And alongside post-colonial hermeneutics, finally, the Asian feminist approach questions not only colonial ideology entangled in the text, but also underscores its interplay of gender, race, and colonial status. The history of colonization by imperial powers implicates sexual slavery and exploitation of Asian women. And due to their gender and Asian identity, Asian Christian women are doubly marginalized or face multi-layered oppression in their reading of the Bible. First, from patriarchal text of the Bible. Second, from patriarchal text of their own culture and society. And third, from socioeconomic marginalization. And to this reality, Asian feminist hermeneutics seek to decolonize and depatriarchalize the text to construct liberative and counter-narrative readings. Hence, for example, it draws particular attention to Gentile women such as Hagar, an Egyptian slave, or Rahab, a Canaanite prostitute, and challenges the ways in which race and sexuality are frequently symbolized as evil in the Bible. And personally, I have been particularly interested in a slave girl in Philippi in Acts 16, whose thrice marginalized and exploited identity is highlighted in her otherness of gender, slave status, and religious affiliation. So having looked at what it means to read the Bible from Asian context, now we come to the questions raised. What are the challenges and critiques? Why do we need Asian hermeneutics? In postmodern Asia, biblical interpretation is no longer simply a matter of overcoming the alienation between biblical text and Asian religions or people. Globalization brings far more diversity to Asia. Asian hermeneutics needs to take seriously Asian diaspora communities around the world and a hybrid of Asian culture. And with this, there remain several challenges. First, the goal of Asian hermeneutics should not be reacting against, but contributing to the global hermeneutical discourse. The task is how to utilize various hermeneutical practices with our Asian needs to enrich the global community. In other words, can we sing the Lord's song together with others around the world, bringing our own Asian voices to the music? Second, the formation of a Christian identity in the process of doing Asian hermeneutics is important. The question is not how can an Asian claim her true Christian identity without losing the other, but how can Christian identity make her truly Asian or vice versa? Third, the authority of the Bible stands at two extremes between Asian hermeneutics in academia and Asian Christians in practice. The former relativizes the Bible as one of the many truths and thus strips it of its distinctiveness as the revelatory scripture of God. The authority of the scripture is compromised to serve one's contextual ideologies. And the latter upholds a fundamentalist approach to the Bible, which deprives it of its dynamic. Hence, the authority of the scripture is upheld to serve one's theological ideologies. Thus, the task for Asian hermeneutics is to reaffirm the authority of the scripture and the dynamic nature of the Bible. And lastly, Asian biblical interpreters continue to be challenged against our own elitism, which alienates ourselves from ordinary Christians' reading of the Bible.